The envelope didn't come in the mail. It was taped to my front door. Bright, white, thick, official looking. The kind of envelope that instantly makes your stomach drop before you even read what's inside. No return smile, no friendly greeting, just bold red letters stamped across the front. Final notice. I peeled it off the door slowly, like it might explode if I moved too fast. Inside was a multi-page document with a logo I recognized. Instantly, the Meadow Ridge Homeowners Association. First, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe a neighbor complaint. Maybe a warning. Then I saw the number. $250,000. I had to sit down. The document claimed I had accumulated ongoing violations over several years. Unapproved fencing. Improper driveway material. Landscaping inconsistent with community standards. Daily penalties. Retroactive fines. Legal fees already added. $250,000. For my land, I read it 3 times, hoping the number would change. It didn't. I'd lived on that property long before Meadow Ridge became what it is now. Back when the roads weren't paved and the houses weren't stacked. Wall to wall, I kept to myself. Paid my taxes. Never attended HOA meetings. Never signed HOA paperwork, and yet here they were. Threatening liens, foreclosure, and court action if I didn't pay within 30 days. I drove straight to the HOA office. If you've ever been inside one, you know the look. Beige walls, fake plants, framed posters about community harmony and shared responsibility. It smelled like air freshener and quiet authority. Behind the front desk sat the HOA president. Karen. The internet meme kenworst.com, smiling, confident, in a way that says she's never been told no. She didn't ask why I was there. She already knew. You're here about the fine, she said. Folding her hands together, I placed the letter on the desk. This is insane, I said. There has to be a mistake. She slid a folder toward me without hesitation. No mistake, she replied. Your property has been in violation for years. I opened the folder. Inside were photos of my land, zoomed in shots of my fence, my driveway, my trees, taken from angles that made it clear someone had gone out of their way to document every inch. You never notified me, I said. We sent multiple notices. She answered smoothly. I never received them. She smiled. Not receiving them doesn't invalidate them. I told her I never joined the HOA. Her smile tightened. Just a little. All properties within Meadow Ridge Estates fall under HOA jurisdiction. That sentence hit me harder than the fine, because it wasn't true. At least, it didn't match what I knew. My deed predates the HOA, I said. My land was here first. Karen leaned back in her chair. Sir, she said, we've been managing this community for decades. Your property is surrounded by HOA land. You benefit from our roads, our security, our amenities. I looked her straight in the eyes. And who owns the land those roads sit on? For the first time, she hesitated. That's not relevant. But it was relevant to me. Very relevant. My grandfather bought this land before Meadow Ridge even existed. He was a careful man, documented everything, trusted no one blindly. Over the years, developers came and went. Deals were made. Parcels were leased. Some sold. Some never were. I inherited the property with a stack of paperwork, thicker than a phone book, and standing there in that HOA office, staring at a $250,000 fine, something didn't sit right. I asked Karen one more question. If I don't pay this, I said, what happens? Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. We place a lien on your property, she said. Then we pursue foreclosure. Just like that. I walked out. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out every document I had, deeds, plats, surveys, contracts, papers my grandfather kept labeled in neat handwriting. I spread them across the dining table and started connecting dots. And the more I looked, the stranger things became. The HOA boundary map on their website didn't line up with the original land surveys. The road easements were vague, almost suspiciously so. Some parcels showed transfers that never fully completed. Called a real estate attorney. The next morning, then a land surveyor, then a title researcher. Call made my heart beat faster, because every expert I spoke to said some version of the same thing. Something's not right here. 2 weeks later, the surveyor asked me to come outside. He had his equipment set up along the edge of my property. He looked down at his tablet, then back at the land, then back at the screen. You're going to want to see this, he said. He turned the screen toward me. The boundary lines didn't stop at my fence. They didn't stop at the road. They ran straight through the heart of Meadow Ridge, through the HOA clubhouse. Through the streets, through the neighborhood itself. I felt my throat go dry. According to these records, he said carefully, this land was never legally transferred. I stared at the map. And that's when it hit me. The HOA hadn't fined me for violating their rules. They fined me on land that might still belong to me. And if that was true, everything was about to change. By the time the HOA meeting rolled around, the fine wasn't the biggest thing on my mind anymore. The truth was, for 2 weeks, my life had turned into a blur of phone calls, scanned documents, and late-night conversations with professionals who kept using phrases like unusual, overlooked, and potentially explosive. Every new piece of information pointed in the same direction, and none of it was good news for Meadow Ridge. The land survey was finished first. Then came the title search. Then the attorney's final review. I remember sitting across from him in his office as he closed the folder slowly, like he needed a moment to choose his words carefully. If these records hold, he said, the HOA doesn't have authority over your property. I nodded. I'd already accepted that, he continued, and possibly not over anyone else's either. That's when my stomach tightened. The story went back decades. Before the manicured lawns, before the clubhouse, before the association even existed, a development company had approached my grandfather for land access temporary use. Road placement, utilities, paperwork was drafted fast. Some parcels were leased. Others were marked for future purchase. But that purchase never fully happened. The company folded. Another company stepped in. Then another. Somewhere along the way, everyone assumed ownership had transferred. It hadn't. Legally, the land was still tied to my family's name, which meant the HOA had been collecting dues, issuing fines, and enforcing rules on land it didn't actually own. And now, they had tried to find the one person who still had the original paperwork. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. Normally, maybe a dozen people showed up, retirees complaining about trash cans and fence paint colors. This time, the parking lot was full. Word had spread. Apparently, Karen had told a few board members that I was challenging the authority of the HOA and refusing to comply with community standards. That was enough to get everyone curious and nervous. I walked in with my attorney beside me and a thick folder under my arm. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Every eye in the room followed us. Karen sat at the front table with the board members, her posture perfect, her expression calm. The gavel rested near her hand, like a symbol of control. She cleared her throat. We'll call this meeting to order, she said. First item on the agenda. Ongoing violations concerning Lot 17. That was me. She gestured in my direction. Sir, you've refused to pay outstanding fines totaling $250,000. This meeting will serve as your final opportunity to respond before legal action begins. I stood up slowly. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. I'm not here to argue about fence height, I said. I'm here to talk about ownership. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Karen smiled politely. Ownership has already been established, she said. Meadow Ridge Estates, my attorney interrupted. Actually, it hasn't. That's when Karen's smile faded, but just slightly. But enough. He placed the first document on the table. Certified land survey, stamped and signed. This survey shows the original boundary lines. He said, they extend beyond Lot 17. Far beyond. Karen leaned forward, squinting. That doesn't mean anything, she said quickly. We have our own records. Then you'll want to see these, I said. I opened the folder. Deeds, title, histories, county records. I laid them out one by one. The room grew quiet, very quiet. These documents showed that the land Meadow Ridge was built on was never fully transferred to the developers. My attorney continued. The HOA does not hold clear title to the roads, the clubhouse, or the common areas. Someone in the back whispered, "What does that mean?" Karen's voice snapped sharp. "This is absurd," she said. "We've governed this community for years. That's the problem," my attorney replied. "You governed land. You didn't own." The murmurs turned into open chatter. Homeowners started pulling out their phones. A few stood up, craning their necks to see the documents. Karen banged the gavel odor, she said. "This meeting is not the place for. It's exactly the place," I said. "Louder now. You fined me $250,000 for violating HOA rules on land that, according to the county, still belongs to me." Silence slammed down like a wall. Karen stood up. "That's impossible," she said. "If that were true, the county would have evaded," my attorney said calmly. "We confirmed it yesterday." Her face went pale. One of the board members leaned over and whispered something to her. Another started flipping through his own papers, hands shaking. A homeowner near the front raised her hand. "Are you saying," she asked, "that we've been paying dues to an HOA that doesn't own the neighborhood?" No one answered her. Karen finally spoke, but her confidence was gone. "We'll need to review these documents," she said. "This meeting is adjourned." She slammed the gavel and stood up, but the room erupted. People shouted questions. "What about our dues? Are our homes affected? Is this even legal?" Karen walked out without answering a single one. Over the next few days, everything unraveled. The county launched an investigation. Title insurance companies got involved. Lawyers started calling homeowners. And every single check confirmed the same thing. The HOA had no legal claim to the land it controlled. The fines, the rules, the threats, all built on an assumption that was never true. And suddenly, that $250,000 fine didn't look like power anymore. It looked like a mistake, a very expensive one, because now the HOA wasn't just facing embarrassment, they were facing the consequences of pretending to own something they never did. And that was only the beginning. Once the truth was out, everything moved fast. Too fast for the HOA. The county didn't waste time. Within days of the meeting, official notices were sent out, not just to the board, but to every homeowner in Meadow Ridge Estates. The language was cold, legal, and impossible to ignore. Disputed land ownership, pending investigation, suspension of enforcement authority. In plain English, it meant one thing. The HOA no longer had power. The same people who used to threaten neighbors over trash bins and grass heights suddenly couldn't even send a warning letter. Fines were frozen. Liens were put on hold. The rules everyone feared for years became meaningless overnight. Karen didn't say a word publicly. She stopped answering emails, stopped returning calls. The once confident president who ruled every meeting with a gavel vanished behind legal counsel and silence. But the damage she left behind couldn't be hidden. Homeowners started asking questions. Real questions. People wanted to know where their dues had gone, why no one had noticed the missing land transfer, why a board that claimed to protect property values had never confirmed ownership of the property. It's controlled. And the answers were ugly. Financial records showed millions of dollars collected over the years spent on landscaping, salaries, renovations, and administrative costs. All of it tied to land the HOA didn't legally own. That's when the lawsuits started. Not just against the HOA, against individual board members, against the management company, against anyone whose name appeared on the paperwork. Homeowners who once defended the HOA suddenly turned on it. Some were angry, some were scared, most were both. Title insurance companies sent letters. Banks requested clarification. Realtors froze listings. Meadow Ridge Estates became a legal minefield overnight. And me? I was right in the center of it. My attorney advised me to stay quiet, publicly, and I did. But behind the scenes, everything changed. Because once the county confirmed the land ownership, the question was no longer, do I owe the HOA money? It became, what does the HOA owe me? The answer was complicated. Technically, the HOA had been using my land for decades. Roads, utilities, common spaces. They charged others for access. They issued fines. They enforced rules. All without legal authority. In any other situation, that would be called trespass. At a massive scale. The HOA's lawyers tried to negotiate quietly at first. They offered to resolve the misunderstanding. They suggested retroactive agreements. They asked if I'd be willing to formalize ownership transfer for a fee. I said no. Not out of spite, out of principle. You don't threaten someone with foreclosure, then ask for favors when you get caught. Karen finally resigned. Weeks later, no announcement, no apology. Just a brief notice posted on the HOA website that read, effective immediately, the board president has stepped down. The board followed soon after, without leadership, without authority, and buried under lawsuits. Meadow Ridge HOA officially dissolved 6 months later. The name was removed from county records. The bank accounts were frozen. The office was shut down. The same office where Karen once smiled while threatening my home was boarded up and abandoned. But the neighborhood still existed. People still lived there, and they needed stability. That's when I made a choice that surprised everyone. Instead of retaliating, instead of cashing in on the chaos I offered, clarity. Working with the county and a neutral trust, I established legitimate land use agreements for the roads and common areas. Transparent terms. No hidden fines. No arbitrary rules. Just basic maintenance costs and shared responsibility. Homeowners were given a choice. Sign fair agreements. Or don't. Most signed. Some came to apologize in person. Awkward conversations. Nervous laughs. A few genuine regrets. Others avoided me completely, unsure how to face someone they once believed was the problem neighbor. I didn't hold grudges, but I didn't forget either. The $250,000 fine. It vanished. Not because it was forgiven, because it never had the right to exist. The liens were erased, the threats dissolved. The fear that letter tried to create lost all power. And the irony, the HOA that tried to take my land for violations on my property lost everything because they never owned any of it. Sometimes, authority is just confidence without proof. Sometimes, power survives only because no one questions it. And sometimes, all it takes is one envelope taped to the wrong door to expose the truth. I still walk those streets, the same streets the HOA once claimed as theirs. Kids ride bikes, neighbors wave, life goes on. But every time I pass that empty HOA office, I think about how close they came, not to winning, but to never being questioned at all. They find the wrong person, on the wrong land, and in the end, they lost the neighborhood they thought they owned.